Well, it's become very clear to me now that I have the motherboard installed into the case that the space between the top of the case and the top of the motherboard is just too narrow for me to fit the Kraken X62 as I had hoped. I was thinking maybe even a single radiator liquid cooler alternative would be good, but the decent ones are 140 millimeter radiators, and this is only a 120 millimeter spot right here, so that won't work either. Clearly the cooling limitations on the Corsair 300R, as well as the Corsair 460X, which is the other machine that I had difficulty installing the X62 in fact, beyond difficulty, wasn't possible. Now, I was hoping that this hard drive tray came out, because if it did, then we could mount the cooler vertically here. But this hard drive tray is riveted in place. It will not remove. So I'm left with little option but to put a traditional air cooler on the CPU. However, a lot of people have talked about these new CPUs are not only hard to get and expensive, but the report on the net is that they run hot. So you don't want to go cheap on your cooler. So I was looking around the office to see what else we can use, and I have this cooler here, which is the Noctua NHD9L. And I think we're going to go ahead and mount this one into the case, and we're going to use this cooler instead. And this should be more than adequate for any cooling that the CPU may need if it does in fact run hot. Now, the owner of the computer has no plans to overclock it. They're not interested in overclocking. They want the most reliable, most quiet machine that they can have. Now I'm going to go ahead and just install the cooler and leave the camera where it's at. We're not going to do the close-ups because of the time it takes, and I want to expedite this build and get it done. So you can watch it, in this particular build, you can watch from a distance there on the fixed camera. Let me get the Kraken X62 out of my way. Let's just set that back there for now. And, you know, Noctua's got a great reputation for making outstanding air coolers. They are expensive, but you do get what you pay for. I haven't had any negative experiences with any Noctua coolers. I hope this won't be my first one. So, let's see what we've got here. We've got the all the accessories and mounting kit are there. Noctua does like their packaging. I've never seen a company that just loves packaging as much as Noctua does. You'd think they were shipping something fragile. All right, let's see. What a weird packing. Wow. This is where the cooler is. It's in this box. That was in this box. That was in this box. All right. So let's just get all that out of my way. And let's hope that this is going to fit the socket okay. I'm pretty sure it will. Now this is the smaller version of other Noctua coolers you've seen me use. It's really meant for 3U type server system, server cases. But I think it's going to suit our needs just fine. So let's get all this out of the way. Okay. So in the box, we've got a number of items here, which I'm not quite sure which one we need. It looks like that's the one right there. Okay, well, that works for me. I'll turn it around so you can see what I'm doing here. This is the back plate. It's a metal, all metal back plate here. And we're just going to line it up. There's holes on the back of the plate. There's mounting points here for the socket, 2 on the top, 1 on the bottom. There's 2 holes here on the top, 1 on the bottom. That's how you know how to align that. We'll just slide that right in like so. These are AMD brackets. Here's our thermal compound. There's extra fan brackets in here to add another fan onto the cooler for a push-pull configuration. We're just going to leave it like it is. And there is some cardboard in here that has to be removed because that's going to affect your ability to cool. And the fan, the arrows on the fan indicate that the airflow is going this direction, so we want all the airflow to be moving out towards the back of the case when we mount this. All right, so in this bag we should have some spacers that need to go on here. There they are. And those are just going to go on each post like this. Now looking at the heatsink and looking at which way it's going to go on, the support bars have to go then across the top and the bottom instead of on the sides. So let me go ahead and do that now. All right, now these support bars are going to go in, and you want it so that the screw that's coming out of it faces up, or you'll be doing it twice. I think I'll start with this top one here. And then I'm going to grab these thumb screws and put one on each side of it here. Do the bottom one next. Go. Grab my screwdriver here and just tighten these down. There's no particular order to which you have to follow to tighten them down. And make sure they're good and secure. Now, in the bag, you're going to have a lot of leftover parts because this fits socket 2011 and AMD, and so the standoffs that are included with the Intel set are for socket 2011, where you don't have to use a backplate because the socket is a backplate on socket 2011 boards. Now I can put some thermal compound on there, so let me do that now. There we go. Actually, I'm going to put just a little tiny bit more on there. That's good. Now I just put a little Scotch tape on my finger here so I can spread or paint the thermal compound on, covering the CPU entirely. There's really no wrong, well there are several wrong ways to apply thermal compound, but there's numerous ways to apply it. Some people prefer to dab some in the center, and then of course you never quite know if you have too much or not enough when you put the heatsink on. Some people prefer to make patterns, a Z or an X pattern, to try and make sure that they're covered. I prefer to paint mine on. I've been doing this for over 25 years, and this is the way that works for me. And unlike other YouTube channels, the things I build actually go to customers to be used in real life. And so if there were any negative consequences to any of the ways that I build, I would be the first to know about it and the first to alter my ways. But 2.5 decades can't be wrong, so be wary of people that you read about on the internet that make false claims of the right way and the wrong way with regards to thermal compound. They really don't know what they're talking about. I can talk from experience, and that's all that really matters. And And that's why I do this channel, just to try and erase all those myths that come from the know-it-alls, and there are plenty of them online, so just be aware of that. I got a little thermal compound here on my finger, and I do like that process of applying thermal compound because it doesn't leave much of a mess. Now for the next part here, I'm going to have to take this fan off, because I know from previous experience with these coolers that to get to these screws, the fan gets in the way. So just pull back and away. Again, it's back and away, and the fan should lift straight out. There we go. And we're just going to set that down for right now. Now we can finally remove this cover. This has been on the whole time to protect the heat transfer area from any contaminants, dust, oils from your skin, etc. Let's go ahead and put that on there. I'm going to get my screwdriver. This is a lot easier if you do this with the case laying flat, but if I do that, you guys won't be able to see. Got that one started. Now these you want to tighten down together. Don't tighten down one side and then do the other side, because you're not going to get a good even connection with the two surfaces of the heat shield on the CPU and the bottom of the cooler. So on all coolers, you really want to make sure when you mount them to the bottom, or to the top rather, of your CPU, that you alternate the screws as much as possible so that the pressure on the CPU is equalized as much as possible, that there's no warping happening there. Well, this is looking good. Great. I see we've got space for our RAM to go in there, which is good. Some of the larger coolers might block this area, and we have a heat sink here that's very clear of this heat sink. These two heat sinks, the one in the back and this one. This is a really good fit, finally, for this motherboard, or for this case rather, and the motherboard combined. Now I can put the fan back in. Again, I want to make sure that my arrows indicate that I'm going to be blowing the air out towards the back. I want the fan, the CPU fan, to come out at the bottom here. And then what we can do is put this in as far as it will go, all the way to the base. And then lock it back in position. There we go. And now I can plug this into where it says CPU fan up here on the top. I like that there's really no cable to manage here. They give you just the perfect length of cable. Now I can hook up all the power and data cables. Let me do that now. Let me first clean up this little mess right here. Okay, so now I'm going to install the power cables. So I'm going to take out the cables we've got. Whoa. And let's see, we need motherboard power first. That's always an easy one to get out of the way. All right, I'm going to start hooking up power with the large 24-pin motherboard power connector. So here on the back of the power supply, this actually splits between the top and bottom. I'm not sure why Corsair did that, but it looks like the small half goes on top and the large half goes just below it. So like this and like this. I guess it doesn't look too bad. It's unusual. They're typically in a straight line on other power supplies I've worked with, so That's a bit different. We're going to feed that out through the back here. Pull that through. And then, let's see, we want to come up right about here. And then we're going to plug this in with the clip facing the outside edge of the board. So that's going to go this way. There we go. Now I need the 8-pin CPU power, which is one of these cables here. This looks like it's all PCI-Express, SATA, PCI-Express. What about this? CPU. Here's the one I want. Well, they certainly give you a lot of PCI-Express cables. I guess they're intended for running an SLI configuration. Now the end that's split, that's the end that's intended to go on the board. And this end, it typically says type 4. This one actually doesn't say anything at all. That's the part that goes here on the back of the power supply. And it's going to go where it says 4+4 CPU. We can actually put it right next to the top connector that we just used to keep our cabling all looking nice and neat. And the question is, do we run it over or under? Pull that through, and then up into this corner. The cutout up here is a big cutout. This is a nice change for all the negative things I've got to say about this case with regards to cooling options. At least the opening in the back for running the CPU power cable is much larger than other Corsair cases, specifically the 200R that you see me use all the time. That's often a tight fit. It fits, but it's a tight fit. Now, of course, getting this connector on is probably going to block your view when I'm doing it. I apologize for that, but it is a tight fit, and it's a dark corner that's very enclosed. There's not a lot of room in here to put your hands in there and get this cable on. There we go. There's one side. There's the other side. That looks pretty good. This fan here keeps getting in my way, so why don't we just go ahead and hook this up to the board right now. This rear cooling fan. And I'm not going to worry about cable management at this time. I'm doing a little bit of it just the way I route the cables, but for the most part, oh, I see we have a system fan connector right up here in this corner, another dark little corner that you're not going to be able to see, way up here. This would have all been easier to do without this big Noctua cooler in my way. So keep that in mind. If you're building a similar system, you might just change the order of events. Come on. There it is. All right. So that's good. And I think that's all we run power to for right now. Yeah, because I'm not putting the graphics card in just yet. So let's go ahead and hook up the, oh no, the optical drive. I almost forgot about the optical drive. Let's go ahead and hook power up to that. And this will go down here on the bottom. We'll use the very first connector. And then we're going to run it out through here. And then up to the top. And here on the back of the optical drive. There we go. There. Now we have power hooked up to everything but the graphics card, which we're going to install after we test fire it, because we're going to use the onboard video to test fire it before we go any further with the build, to make sure that everything we've done up to this point is done correctly. So I just put away the extra power cables. We'll come back to that later. Let's do our front port umbilical cables now, which are all right here, and that's for everything that controls the front up here. So let's pull those through. Here we go. Be careful when you're pulling the cables through that they don't snag on anything and cause any damage. This USB 3 cable especially is very thick, and as a result it's not very malleable compared to the other cables that surround it. You also don't want to accidentally tear off one of the ends of these smaller cables by using too much force. So take your time, enjoy your build. Well, this is interesting. This HD audio cable seems to be a bit short. Ideally, it's going to be long enough. Let's see. How can we run this? Let's run it down. And on some cases, I can sometimes find a little hole here to slip this through, but this one's not going to cut it. And then the question is, where do we bring it in from the front? Do I bring it in below? No, I'm going to bring it in behind. Let's do that. Bring this cable in behind the others, just like this, just to try and keep it looking neat. Oh man, is that going to fit? Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That just barely makes the run. You know, the question is how I run this without this loop here. It's a little crazy, so I think I want to fix that right now. Let's take this back out and let's run it behind this and then up. That should give us just a little bit more slack. There we go. And that is still a very tight fit right here. There we go. Well, the good news of it being a tight fit is that it'll be really easy to cable manage that. Not a lot of slack to have to deal with. No slack at all compared to this power cable where you can see I've got a ton of slack here. But that's primarily because we're not using any of the other power cables on the power connectors on the wire. Okay, USB 3, where's that going? That's going to go, I guess we can run this through this hole right here. It's less crowded, so we'll bring that in like so. And then we'll plug it in right here where it says USB 3. That's done. And then we just have the front port umbilicals to hook up. So we're going to run those down through here, pull those in. We start with the hard drive LED cable, which is right here. Let's make sure it's not tangled up with anything. Make sure that the positive cable is on the outside edge, bottom row. The power LED cable is going to be just above it, positive above positive and negative above negative. So here's my power LED. See, that's the negative side, that's the positive side. So those will go together like this. And then on to the two pins. Okay, those are on good now. And then finally, got my reset wire. And that's gonna go, oh. Okay, so that's on properly now. And then we have the last wire here, which is the power switch, and it's going to go right beside those two pins right there. And now we're ready to go ahead and fire it up and see if it's going to boot up. So let me just move this aside here. There we go. I'll put these cables away for right now. We'll just put those over here. Let me grab my computer monitor. And like I said, just for this power on self-test, we're going to use the graphics chip that's built onto the Intel CPU. Before we go through the trouble of adding our graphics card, let's go DVI here into the back. And then I need a keyboard and a mouse, so let me grab my keyboard and mouse right here. Set these down here. I gotta turn them on. And I'll plug this wireless dongle here in the back, USB port. And then I need a power cable. Let's do that. Oh, it's getting exciting. Make sure the switch is flipped to the off position. Okay, power cable's in. All right, we are ready for our very first test fire. And let me cut this light right here because it's going to give us some reflection. In fact, I'm going to cut this other light so you can see the monitor better. And let's flip the power supply on. And let's hit our power switch. Light comes on. Both rear fans are spinning. I haven't hooked the front fan up yet. So far, so good. And we just need to give it a minute to register everything. It's the very first power on. So don't panic if you don't see something right away. Something's starting to happen. Reboot and select proper boot device. Well, that's what I was looking for. Let's go into the BIOS. Let's see what version of BIOS we have in there. Oh, I didn't do it in time. Let's try it again. Just going to repeatedly hit the delete button. There we go. So it looks like, let's go to System. We're running version F3. Let me just double check and see if there's a newer version of BIOS. If so, this would be the time to install it. This Noctua fan is crazy quiet. I don't hear a thing, which is a good thing. Let's hope it's cooling. We'll test that later. We'll run some benchmarks on the machine, or run things that make the processor work really hard, like Prime 95, and let's see how hot it'll get. But we'll cross that bridge a bit later. Let me check the BIOS version first. All right, so I just checked online and a new BIOS is available. We've got F3 now, and so F4 is the latest. So I've downloaded that and extracted the BIOS update file onto this flash drive, which I'm going to now plug in to the back here and any available USB port. And then we're going to hit the power button here and then hit the end button on the keyboard, END, which on this keyboard I have to hit function and the right arrow. Other keyboards have an isolated END button, a full-size keyboard. The smaller keyboards, they combine keys. We want, see, we've got version F3. We want to update the BIOS, so I hit enter. There's the BIOS I've downloaded on the flash drive right there, so I select it. It's going to verify it's the right BIOS. And we can do a fast or an intact. We'll do intact. And then this is the update process. It's not the scary thing it used to be many years ago where people were frightened of bricking a motherboard. It's very unlikely to happen today unless you were to lose power while the update was happening, in which case that's That's about the worst thing that can happen, and it's highly unlikely. And of course, you can plug into a UPS or what's called an uninterruptible power supply if you have frequent power outages where you live. I don't think we've had a power outage here for quite some time, so it's highly unlikely to happen, statistically unlikely. And we're about 35% of the way of updating. It's important that you are patient and do not interrupt the process. Don't shut the computer off. Don't play with the keyboard or the mouse. Just let it sit and do its thing. And before you know it, it'll be all done. This is best to do now before we install the operating system to avoid any problems that the new BIOS update fixes. So if you wait until you have a problem, that's your choice. But I prefer to, on a brand new computer, make sure that it has the latest and greatest right out of the gate. All right, so it's just automatically rebooted itself here. And it's going to take a minute. Again, be patient. I've just heard it shut off again. Oh, I guess I didn't hear it shut off. I heard the fan spin down. And then we're right back to the reboot and select proper boot device. Let me get back into the BIOS again. And let's make sure we've got version F4 installed now. Yep, version F4. That's exactly what I was looking for. Great, so we know everything's working correctly. We can verify the amount of RAM we have installed. We can verify, we can go to the PC health status. We can see voltages. Let's go back to, let's see, there's our UEFI. Oh, that's the USB flash drive there. There's the Samsung SSD 960, so it sees that. We should be able to see how much RAM we've got in there. Everything looks good. I know the RAM's in here somewhere, advanced memory settings. I'm going to just leave all this alone for right now, and we're going to exit the BIOS. We'll just say save and exit. We didn't change anything. It doesn't matter if we save it or not. And then I'm going to go ahead and just shut it down. Now you'll see even when the computer is off, lights remain on, and that's because modern ATX systems, they always have power through them even when they're off, except that it's not off. This is why you don't go pulling stuff out real quick or touching the motherboard until you ensure power is off. And one of the best ways to do that is to just hit the switch on the back of the power supply. That cuts power right from the device. All your lights will go out, and then give it a few seconds to drain, or you can always hit the power button, and you may see the fan spin just for an instant as the capacitors then drain, just to ensure that there's no electrical discharge, which can damage components. So now that we know all of that works, I can remove the flash drive. We're done with that. Let me bring the lights back up. There's one light. Let's bring these lights up. And let's continue with the build. Now, I'm realizing I did not put the SATA cable on the optical drive. Let's take care of that. I've got all the spare parts in the motherboard box, where I recommend that you keep yours as well. Let's get this keyboard and mouse moved over here. Here's our data cables. And we just need one for this computer because it's only got the one optical drive, and then the solid state drive, of course, is the M.2. You can dump that. We'll keep the spare cable in the box in case the customer wants to add storage in the future. I always like to use the cable, the one cable that has the right angle, and plug that here on the back of the optical drive. Normally, I'm more comfortable with the power being unplugged, so I'm going to do that right now. And then we're going to plug this down into SATA port 0, assuming it doesn't conflict with the M.2 drive. If it does, you can refer to your motherboard manual to verify if the M2 drive shares a port with the SATA connectors. In most cases, it won't with an NVMe drive, but with a SATA-based M.2, it makes sense that it takes the place of one of the SATA ports. Which one that is depends on your motherboard. So if you build a system and you're not seeing your M2 drive, it may be because you've got another drive plugged into the same SATA port that shares the bandwidth with a port number. And that's all going to be in your motherboard manual. So again, I'm not going to worry too much about cable management at this point because I just want to get this up and running. So let's grab the video card and finish this build up. All right, so here we've got the EVGA GeForce 1080 Ti, which is completely sealed. And I'm going to have to cut this box open. This is obviously the first time that I am experiencing these parts, as you can tell by the fact I have to cut the boxes open. Those are little hints and giveaways you can tell in other people's videos when they're claiming they're doing something, and maybe they're telling the truth, maybe they're lying when they claim they're doing it for the first time, and yet somehow the box has already been opened, and there's other sort of giveaways like that to watch for. And this is all upside down, which is fine. It can be upside down, I don't mind. Let's get everything out. And that can go. Cute. That can go. Got posters, instructions, drivers, go faster stickers. What else do we have in here? Important notice. It talks about thermals. Not worried about any of that. We won't be using any of these cables because we have the right power supply. If you have to use any of those cables, you should upgrade your power supply. Don't know why they include those. In my opinion, they should not be included. Using a power supply with adapters should be discouraged, in my opinion. Ah, that's a beauty. Look at that beauty. All this plastic has to come off. So we just have to find somewhere where we can grab it. There we go. And they didn't make this one easy, did they? Well, there's most of it. Get another piece right here. There we go. And we've got another piece back here that's got to come off. That's interesting. They split it into two different halves. Here we go. Come on. You'd think they'd have real easy pull tabs on this stuff if they wanted you to remove it. Just to make it clear that you're not supposed to install with that plastic on there. It's also a cover that they use in shipping over the PCI-Express plug. So we're going to get rid of that. And then there's the card in all of its glory. It looks like we have yet another piece of plastic covering up the logo. That looks garish because it's all bubbled up. There, that's better. Okay, now we have to figure out where this is going to go. We're going to plug it into the top. Let me unplug this video card because we're not using that onboard video anymore. And I'm just going to see where that's going to plug in. So it looks like the second two screws have to come out there. So let me grab my driver. Once again, I apologize for your lack of being able to see what I'm doing here, but just pulling out these two PCI-Express slot covers. That's where our video card's going to line up. And I was just dry fitting it there to make sure that I had it, that I'm removing the right ones. You always want to install in your topmost PCI-Express socket because that is your fastest one. Make sure that the retention lever here is in the open position, it's in the outward position. And then I'm just going to rotate the card, line it up with the socket and with the PCI Express holes or slots here on the back of the case. And I'm going to push it straight in, and I should hear that retention socket click closed. There it is. And now I'm going to secure it back with the screws I just removed. There's one. And there's the other one right there. And then we have to give the graphics card power. So let me get these out of the way. And go back to our bag of cables. And in here we will have, oh, it gave us another CPU connector. That's interesting. They gave us two of those. All right, so here it says PCI Express on the connector, and we just need one of these cables. And we're done with those. All of these parts here, all this is going to go back in the motherboard box because customer may need them at some point in the future, years from now when they want to upgrade, or months from now when they want to upgrade. All right, let me just get the wire tie off of here. So with this one now, the clips are going to go on the bottom, and I just want to look at what's going to look the best. Looks like if I use the middle connector here on the end, and then the end connector on the inside. You'll notice one's an 8-pin and one's a 6-pin, and these cables accommodate for that, and I just wire back the extra 2-pin there. And again, I'm not going to worry about the cable management right now. I'm going to do just very minor cleanup. I'm going to run that through the back here. And then it'll have to go around here like this. And then I can bring that in. And this is going to plug in right on the next plug on top that we have available. Keep all our cables together all nice and neat. That installs the graphics card. Then I just have to hook up this front fan. So let's grab the wire tie off of there. A lot of times you'll see I don't hook up this front fan, but if there's a graphics card installed, I will. And that'll help just keep that airflow moving over the graphics card and make sure that it runs nice and cool. And then we can run that right through here. And I just need to find a place on the board. Oh, we got a place right up front. So I can run that right here. This board has lots of places for fans. I see another location here. I thought I saw another one. Oh, yeah, that one I already pointed out. But there was another one. Well, anyway, that's the system build right there without any cable management. It should be done. Let's hook it all back up again. This time I got to make sure to plug the monitor into the graphics card that I added, not to the onboard graphics, because you will see a your really bad frame rates in the games you play if you've hooked up to the wrong graphics card. So what I'm going to do is this little plastic cover that's over the DVI port on the graphics card I've added, I'm just going to put that over the one on the motherboard so that the customer gets a hint not to use that one. There's that. And then I need power again, which I have here. Okay, let me turn this so you can see. Let's cut some lights once more so you can see the screen. We'll cut this light as well. And let's hit power. Oh, I gotta flip the switch on the power supply. Now let's hit power. Oh, I hear. I'm hearing a weird vibration on the fan. Wonder why that's happening. Well, it powers up. Everything is past all the power on self-test. So now we can begin to install Windows. Let me do that. Let me grab Windows 10. All right, so here I have the latest copy of Windows 10 on a USB flash drive. And I'm just going to plug it into any port here on the back of the machine. Hit the switch again. Not sure what's going on with this fan. I'm hearing this fan hit something. And I don't know if it's the back plate. There's no wires under there for that to hit, so it is definitely you know what, this is really bugging me. So I'm going to turn this off. We're going to cut power. And I want to take another look at this graphics card because that's not right. So let's unplug power. And unplug the monitor from it. And let's pull power from it. Let's take this out and take a gander, see if there's anything obvious that I can see. That is not normal. And it really bugs me. Especially when you spend this kind of money on a rig, you certainly don't expect to hear anything like that. It's just not acceptable. It appears to be, in my opinion, this fan here is hitting something, but I don't know what it's hitting. And when I spin it, it's not making any noise at all. But it's almost like it's making contact with the heatsink behind it. That's what it sounds like it's doing. So maybe I just had it put in with too much pressure. Let me try and just reseat it back in the socket. And let's see if that helps at all. There we go. Now let's put power back on it again. So large connector, the 8-pin connector, will go on first, and then the 6-pin connector. And then plug our monitor back into it, right here, and give it power. Flip the switch on, turn it on here. No, still doing it. That's very odd. I am going to try and get Windows 10 installed, and I'm going to let that run like that just for a moment. Ideally, it should just automatically boot to Windows 10 since the flash drive is the only bootable thing on the system. There we go. We're just going to go with the defaults here. Oh, Windows 10 does not see... Wait a minute, what's going on? It's not seeing my keyboard, but it sees my mouse. So we'll click Next. Install. That noise has gone away, but that's because both fans on the graphics card have stopped. When I turn on the graphics card, the fan on your left spins and the one on the right doesn't for a few seconds, and that's where the noise is. When the one on the right starts, the noise doesn't change, it's completely silent, and then they both shut off. So we're going to look into that after a while. But for right now, let's see here, we're going to say I don't have a product key. And we want Windows 10 Pro. And hit next. That's what this customer wanted, so that's what we're installing for them. We'll accept the license agreement. Hit next. Custom install. It sees the M.2 drive. I hit next. And that's pretty much all you have to do to start your Windows 10 installation. I am going to clean up some of this while this is going on, and then I'll come back after I get all the drivers installed. And I'm also going to take another look at this fan and see what's going on there. See if I can't figure out what's happening or if I need to send the unit back to EVGA. It's a great thing about EVGA is they won't give you a hassle. You know, when it comes to any sort of warranty, refund, return, they stand behind their product. I didn't mean to say refund, but I meant to say return. They're really, really good at giving you hassle-free returns and absolutely 100% standing behind the product for the entire warranty period, which on EVGA products is typically longer than most other manufacturers. Also, all their support is USA-based, so you don't have to deal with trying to understand somebody who doesn't speak English as their native language. So let me go take care of this. I'll see you guys back here once I have the OS finished, drivers installed, and have this fan situation sorted. And then we'll run some tests on it and measure the temperatures and see how it performs.